Hi everyone, welcome you all to this online class of science with me. My name is Abhishek and you are watching the channel Vigyanam, in which we had already completed the first part of this chapter. Now we are going to complete the second part of the chapter Microorganism Friend and Foe from class 8 NCERT. Today we are going to complete the following topics such as harmful microorganisms, disease causing microorganisms in human, animals as well as in plants. Then we will complete the topic food poisoning, food preservation, nitrogen fixation and the nitrogen cycle. Let's see what we have, such as what are the harmful microorganisms. Those microorganisms which used to cause or spread the diseases in the human being, they are known as what? Pathogens. And they can be spread by any means. Here we have some of the diseases which are caused by the bacterial microorganisms such as cholera, diarrhea, pneumonia, whooping cough, tetanus, plague, typhoid, etc. So, as I have already said that the pathogens can enter our body by any means. So, they can be transferred from the infected person to a healthy person through air, through water, through food, or with the physical contact. So these type of diseases are known as what? Communicable diseases. Such examples of those diseases are cholera, common cold, chickenpox, tuberculosis, etc. Housefly is one of such organisms which can transfer or which act as a carrier of these diseases, because housefly used to sit on the waste organic materials in which the bacteria used to grow. So those harmful pathogens may get attached with the body of the housefly, and when those housefly will sit on the food that we are going to consume, that housefly will infect our food with the microorganisms or pathogens, and when we will consume that food we will get infected with that pathogen. Thus housefly act as a good carrier of those microorganisms. Remember this. Here we have two pictures, one of this Anopheles mosquito and the female Aedes mosquito. So these two types of mosquitoes are responsible and they act as a carrier of two different diseases such as malaria and dengue. Malaria is infected by the mosquito through Anopheles mosquito, which carries the parasite of malaria, and female Aedes mosquito act as a carrier of dengue virus. Remember this point. Here we have some of the common diseases caused by the microorganisms in human. First of all, we have TB, that is the tuberculosis, which is caused by what? Bacteria. And the mode of transmission of the TB is air. Similarly, the measles, chickenpox and polio are such diseases which are caused by what? Viruses. And the mode of transmission of these viruses, of these microorganisms, are air or contact directly with the person to person or the water. So what are the preventive measures that we can take, that one person can take? So we can keep the patient in complete isolation, as well as we can keep the personal belongings of the patient away from those of the others. And the vaccination must be given to the person at the suitable age. You already are familiar with the term vaccination, isn't it? In the previous video we had completed it. Now the other disease like cholera and typhoid. So these two diseases are mainly caused by the microorganism bacteria. And what is the mode of transmission? Food as well as water, isn't it? So what are the preventive measures that one can take? That is, we should maintain the personal hygiene in our daily life, as well as we should practice the good sanitary habits regularly, and we should consume the cooked food and boiled drinking water. And the vaccination should be done at a proper age, isn't it? Similarly, hepatitis A, which is caused by virus, and the mode of transmission is water, and the preventive measures that we should take, as the mode of transmission is water, so we should always drink what? The boiled water. Also, as we have already discussed about the malaria and dengue, in which the microorganisms responsible is the protozoa, and the mode of transmission is mosquito. So what are the preventive measures that we can take? Means, how can we prevent ourselves from the malaria? That is, we can use a mosquito repellent properly, or we can use a mosquito net, as well as we should spray the insecticides and control breeding of the mosquitoes. Because how the breeding of the mosquitoes is done, whenever there is the stagnant water, that means the water is stagnant, or which is collected at one place for more than few weeks or few days, so the microorganisms like mosquitoes will grow on those stagnant water, and from where the breeding of the mosquitoes will start. And those mosquitoes will do what? They will infect one person to other person, isn't it? Such as, thus we should control the breeding of what? Those mosquitoes. Now, as the microorganism is infect the human being, similarly it infect the animals also. Here we have a dangerous microorganism disease, that is the anthrax. Here we have some of the pictures of the disease caused by the anthrax in human being as well as in animal. So anthrax is such type of disease which is found in human as well as in cattle, which is caused by what? Bacterium. Now, foot and mouth disease of the cattle is also caused by what? Viruses. Here we have a picture of that anthrax cycle. Since we all know that the microorganisms growth is mainly on the dead and decomposed organic matters. So when those decomposed organic matters get consumed by the plant, and when those cattle used to consume those plants, they will get infected with that microorganisms or the bacteria, and those decomposed organic matters or bacteria will also allow the exposure of those bacteria into the air. So if any human being have any cut on any part of his body, and if the anthrax spores are available in the air, they may infect the human being, isn't it? Also, if any fly bite the cattle first, and it then bite the human being, so it can also, the anthrax disease can also transfer from the cattle to the human being also. And the first anthrax, this Bacillus anthrax, was discovered by Robert Koch in the year 1876. So remember these points, students. Another one, the disease is also happens in the plants such as wheat, rice, potato, sugarcane, apples, and etc. So these do what? These diseases reduce the yield of what? Crops. And how can they be controlled? They can be controlled with the help of certain chemicals. Here we have some of the disease in the plant, such as citrus canker. Here we have the picture of the citrus canker, which is caused by what? Bacteria, and the mode of transmission is air. Similarly, here we have the picture of the rust of the wheat, which is caused by what? Fungi, and the mode of transmission is air and seed. Similarly, we have another disease causing microorganism in plants such as yellow veins mosaic of the bhindi or okra. Here we have the picture of the bhindi and okra. Here we have two different types of bhindis. One is the normal or good yield bhindi or the okra, and at the right part we have the yellowish vein bhindi, which is caused by what? Virus, isn't it? And the mode of transmission is what? Insect. You can clearly see the pictures that when the okra get infected by the virus, its yield get reduced, as well as it get infected with the virus, and its greenish part or that chlorophyllc part get vanished because of the parasite virus, and which cause the yellow veins in the okra, isn't it? Now come to the part food poisoning. As we already know that when we leave our food for more than few hours, it get spoiled by some growth of the microorganisms on those food. so they get infected, isn't it? So if we consume those spoiled food which gets spoiled by the microorganism, we will be infected with the food poisoning, isn't it? And it may cause serious illness as well as it may leads to death. So what is the important part that we should remember? That we should not consume the leftover food for more than few hours, because the growth of the microorganisms over those food is high, as well as we should prevent the growth of those microorganisms with the help of some preservers, isn't it? And how can we understand that yes, we get poisoned by the food? So here are some symptoms that with the help of which we can identify that yes, we are food poisoned. So some symptoms are nausea, like the feeling of vomiting, as well as the fever, dizziness, diarrhea, abdominal cramp, and headache. If these type of things happens to you, you might be infected with the microorganisms through food. So that is known as what? Food poisoning. Remember these points, students. If these things happen with you, must remember that these may caused with the help of those microorganisms transferred through food. So how can we prevent those growth of microorganisms? We can preserve the food. So what will the benefit of this food preservation? The food preservation do what? It prevent the food from getting spoiled. It also preserved the food color, its taste, its nutritive values, as well as it remains the food which will last for long period of time, and the shelf life of the food product increase. Here the shelf life means the growth of the microbials in the food checked by the food preservation, means the growth does not happens in a high rate. So what are the different methods of the food preservation? Here we can preserve the food with the help of some oil or vinegar. We can store the food in the airtight containers, as well as we can preserve them with the common salt and the sugar. Also we can do what? We can treat the food, or we can do heat treatment as well as the cold treatment on the food, so as to preserve the food. Some of the chemicals method which are used to preserve the foods are, they can be preserved by the common salt. So what the common salt do? It check the growth of the microbials or the bacteria over the food. Thus we can use this common salt to preserve the meat, fish, as well as some amla, raw mangoes, and tamarind. Similarly, we can preserve the food with the help of sugar, where the sugar used to do what? It reduce the moisture content in the food, which do what? If there is low moisture in the food, it will not help, or it will not allow the growth of the bacteria, because where there is moisture, the growth of the bacteria or the microorganism is high. You have already read it in first chapter, that is in crop production and management, that we should store the food by drying them, isn't it? We should store the seeds. So similarly, we can store the food with the help of some sugar, such as jam, jellies are such foods which get preserved by the sugar. We can also use the oil and vinegar to preserve the food, because these are such medium where the bacteria cannot live for longer time, and that's why we used to preserve the vegetable, fruit, fish, meat, etc. by this method. Also we can use the heat and cold treatment. How? Because you might have observed that your mother used to boil the milk before it is stored or used. So boiling do what? It kills many microorganisms in the food. Similarly, if we keep our food in a refrigerator, it do what? It checks the growth of the microbial in the low temperature, because in refrigerator the temperature is almost very low, which is almost in between the 5 to 7 degrees Celsius. So it do what? It used to check the growth of the microbials, isn't it? So remember this, what preservatives are? Those chemical substances which used to preserve the food, right? Which used to preserve the food and which keep it fresh and make it available for use for after long time is known as what? Preservative. So common salt, sugar, oil, vinegar, and cold and hot treatment are such preservatives. As we have learned about this preservative, so one of such preservation is used in a larger quantity, that is preservation of the milk with the help of pasteurization technique. Now what is this pasteurization technique? If we boil the milk at 70 degrees Celsius for 15 to 30 seconds and suddenly we cool that milk at 0 to 5 degrees Celsius and stored it, that particular process is known as preservation. Here we have the picture of that preservation, such as the milk or the cow or the buffalo milk is transferred in a chamber where there is a heating section, and it get heated to 70 to 80 degrees Celsius for 15 to 30 seconds, and suddenly we are cooling that milk at 0 to 5 degrees Celsius, isn't it? So when we will cool that milk and store that milk, it get pasteurized. Remember this, that milk get what? Pasteurized, isn't it? So by doing so, we can check we can prevent the milk from the growth of microbials in the milk, and we can consume the pasteurized milk directly without boiling it, because it is free from what? Harmful microbes. So in companies or in larger quantity, the milk companies or the milk factories do what? They used to preserve the milk in by the help of this process, the pasteurization process, and they serve the people by packaging this milk. Here some of the pictures of the packets are the toned milk, standardized milk, skim milk, double toned milk, etc. So you might have familiar with these kind of pictures or these kind of products in your daily life. These all are what? Pasteurized milk, isn't it? And who discovered this pasteurization technique? Louis Pasteur. That's why the technique is named as pasteurization. Remember this point, students. Now at the last point we have came, that is the nitrogen cycle. In class 8 you are already familiar with the nitrogen fixation by the bacteria, as the bacteria which are present in the soil, isn't it, which are present in the soil, they used to do what? They used to convert the atmospheric nitrogen into nitrogenous compound, isn't it? So when the atmospheric nitrogen get converted into nitrogenous compound, that particular process is known as what? Nitrogen fixation. So what is the process of that nitrogen fixation? Here we have a nitrogen cycle, with the help of which we can understand this nitrogen fixation process. First of all, if we have the atmospheric nitrogen which get converted into the nitrogenous compound by the process of lightning, because whenever there is lightning and thundering in the air, it get converted into nitrogenous compound and come back to the soil with the help of rain, isn't it? Also those atmospheric nitrogen converted into nitrogenous compound with the help of nitrogenous fixing bacteria. You have already familiar with the bacteria, that is cyanobacteria, which used to convert what? Atmospheric nitrogen into nitrogenous compound. Then those nitrogenous compounds in the soil are uptaken by the plants consume them, then the animal eats those plants, so it gets transferred from the plants to the animal. And when the animal removes its waste, as well as if the animal die, so its death and decomposition also give back the nitrogenous compound to the soil, or those nitrogenous compounds in the soil may directly convert it into the atmospheric nitrogen with the help of another type of bacteria, and they get again revealed to the atmosphere in the form of atmospheric nitrogen, that is N2. So this complete process is known as nitrogen cycle. So here we have the end of our chapter 2, and here we have the end of our video. So I hope you all are very well in this hard time of coronavirus. Stay safe, stay home. God bless you.